Welcome to Night Talk. Hi, and welcome to Night Talk. Tonight I'm going to talk to you about sleep paralysis. I learned a lot about sleep paralysis that I didn't know, and I'll tell you what, this is one hell of a creepy ordeal. I got one viewer to call in this morning and give her experience about sleep paralysis. Her name was Tina Cook. Tina suffered through one of the most common signs of sleep paralysis, and I'm going to play her story for you, okay? Just a second here. Here she comes.
Hi, this is Tina Cook, and I understand that you're going to be talking about sleep paralysis, and I have an experience that I just kind of want to run by you and just see what your take is on it. I was probably 15, maybe 16, and I have an identical twin sister, and so we slept in the same bed, and anyway, I had a really big, dark figure, whether it be foggy, like a fog or a haze, standing in the bedroom doorway. And anyway, I tried to scream, I tried to wake my sister up. I tried to move. I physically couldn't move. I couldn't yell for my mom and dad to come and help. And it just seemed like it went on forever and ever. But finally, the fog, or whatever it was that was in my bedroom doorway, it just dissipated and went to the floor. And I remember seeing the dark fog or haze just kind of roll. It just kind of rolled and then it just dissipated. And anyway, I was just wondering if you could, tell me if that is what sleep paralysis is. Because, I've had it happen growing up more than just that time. My sister and I lived at a local state park, and we had a lot of experiences living in the house we lived in and throughout the park. But anyway, if you could expand on that, I'd appreciate it, and let me know if that is what I experienced. Thank you.
Okay, Tina, Hi, Tina. I'm glad to see you're here. That's exactly what you experienced, and during this episode, I'm going to go over sleep paralysis in great detail. About sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis is a condition that affects less than 8% of the general population. It is defined as a discrete period of time during which voluntary muscle movement is inhibited, yet ocular and respiratory movements are intact. According to a study in the current issue of Sleep Medicine Reviews, some experts now suspect that the townspeople involved in the Salem witch trials may have been experiencing sleep paralysis, because some of the symptoms victims stated and used against the accused during the trials are the exact same symptoms as described for sleep paralysis. Some people who experience these episodes may regularly try to avoid going to sleep because of the unpleasant sensations they experience. But other people actually enjoy the sensations they feel during sleep paralysis, notes Brian A. Sharpless, clinical assistant, professor of psychology at Penn State University. Sharpless stated, and I quote, "I realized that there were no real sleep paralysis prevalence rates available that were based on large and diverse samples, so I combined data from my previous study with 34 other studies in order to determine how common it is in different groups. He looked at a total of 35 published studies from the past 50 years to find lifetime sleep paralysis rates. These studies surveyed a total of 36,533 people. Overall, he found 1/5 of these people experienced an episode at least once. Frequency of sleep paralysis ranged from once in a lifetime to every night. What is sleep paralysis? Sleep paralysis is a feeling of being conscious but unable to move. It occurs when a person passes between stages of awakeness and sleep. During these transitions, you may be unable to move or speak for a few seconds or up to a few minutes. Some people may also feel pressure or a sense of choking. A succubus is a demon in female form or supernatural and folklore tracked back to the medieval legends that appears in dreams and takes the form of a woman in order to seduce men, usually through sexual activity. The male counterpart is an incubus. Parasomnias are disruptive sleep disorders that can occur during arousal from REM sleep or partial arousal from non-REM sleep. Parasomnias include nightmares, night terrors, sleepwalking, confusional arousal, and many others. Confusional arousal is a sleep disorder that will cause you to act in a very strange manner. And confused, when you wake up or starting to wake up, your behavior may include the following: slow speech, confused thinking, poor memory, blunt responses to questions or requests. When a confusional arousal occurs, you may seem to be awake even though you have a foggy state of mind. It happens just after falling asleep or upon awakening in the morning, in the time between wakening and sleep. Episodes are also accompanied by hypnagogic experiences, which are usually auditory or sensory hallucinations. These occur during the transition between sleep and wake, and they consistently fall into 3 categories: intruders, incubus, or vestibular motor. With intruder, there are sounds of doorknobs opening, shuffling footsteps, a shadow man, or a sense of threatening presence in your room. This is one that I would relate to the experience Tina Cook had. Incubus, feelings of pressure on the chest, difficulty breathing, with a sense of being smothered, strangled, or sexually assaulted by a malevolent being. The individual believes they are about to die. Vestibular motor, that's a weird name, is the sense of spinning, falling, floating, flying, hovering over one's body, or another type of out-of-body experience. The experience of sleep paralysis have been documented for centuries. People from different cultures have similar experiences during sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis is brief and not life-threatening, but the person may remember it as a haunting or horrifying experience. What causes sleep paralysis? While sleeping, the body relaxes. The voluntary muscles do not move. This prevents people from injuring themselves or others around them through acting out their dreams. Sleep paralysis involves disruption of fragmentation of rapid eye movement REM sleep cycle. I'm pretty tired. I have had one heck of a day, so my reading is pretty well off. Sleep paralysis is more likely when a person is under stress because of work, family situations, relationships, and so on. The body alternates between rapid eye movement REM and non-rapid eye movement NREM. I have a video that will explain REM and NREM in details for you. It's called Sleep Stages and Circadian Myths. Okay, I'm going to play that for you right now.
Even though you're not conscious during sleep, your brain is deceptively active. It goes through multiple cycles with distinct brain patterns, and it's very important to your ability to perform normal functions when you're awake. You have 4 main stages of sleep, which occur in approximately 90-minute cycles during a normal night of sleep. The first 3 stages are all considered non-rapid eye movement, or non-REM, which I'm going to abbreviate as N1, N2, and N3. So N1 is the stage between sleep and wakefulness. This is when your brain starts producing theta waves. You might experience strange sensations known as hypnagogic hallucinations, which is kind of a fun name, but these can include hearing or seeing things that aren't there, such as seeing a flash of light, or a lot of people hear someone calling their name, or a phone ring, or doorbell, or something like that. Or if you've been doing something really repetitive just before bed, then that can recur in your hypnagogic state. For example, if you've been on a boat all day, you may still feel like you're on water when you drift off to sleep, even if you're on dry land. Or something that's actually called the Tetris effect. If you've been playing Tetris for a long time right before bed, then you might experience visual images of blocks or something all moving in the same direction, kind of like the blocks in the game. But another common feeling during this stage is a feeling of falling, and that leads to what's called hypnic jerks, or those muscle twitches you sometimes experience as you fall asleep. So that's N1, our first lightest stage of sleep. And then we move into N2, which is a slightly deeper stage of sleep. Although it's still pretty easy to wake up someone in N1, people in N2 are harder to awaken. We see more theta waves, as well as something called sleep spindles and K complexes. So sleep spindles are these bursts of rapid rhythmic brain activity, and there's a lot we don't know about the purpose of each sleep stage and the function of these brainwaves, but some researchers think that sleep spindles help inhibit certain cognitive processes or perceptions so that we maintain a tranquil state during sleep. For example, sleep spindles in some parts of the brain are associated with people's ability to sleep through loud noises. And K complexes are kind of similar, but they're a different type of brain activity that's also thought to suppress cortical arousal and keep you asleep, basically. They're also thought to help with sleep-based memory consolidation, which is the theory that some memories are transferred into your long-term memory during sleep. And what's cool is that even though K complexes do occur naturally, you can also make them occur by gently touching someone who's in this stage of sleep, like just brushing against their skin, and that'll induce some K complex activity. So what your brain does is sort of assess that the touch on the skin is non-threatening, and it suppresses the processing of that stimuli to help keep you asleep. So beyond N2, we have N3. So this is our last non-REM stage. And N3 is also called slow wave sleep because, as you might guess, brainwaves are very slow. And these are called delta waves, and they have a range of about 0.5 to 2 hertz. So you get basically a half to 2 oscillations of these brainwaves per second. And when you're in N3 sleep, you are very much dead to the world and really difficult to wake up. And if you walk or talk in your sleep, this is the stage where those things happen. So the last stage we need to talk about is REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement, and that's because this stage is when your eyes move really rapidly beneath your lids. And also, most of your other muscles are paralyzed. So this paralysis might actually be a good thing because most dreaming occurs during REM sleep. So if you weren't paralyzed, your muscles might act out whatever you were dreaming about, which could be unsafe for you and anyone sleeping near you, depending on what type of dreams you have. REM sleep is sometimes called paradoxical sleep because your brain actually seems very active and awake, but your body is prevented from doing anything. It's kind of crazy. Now, in a normal night of uninterrupted sleep, you cycle through these stages about 4 or 5 times each, and it takes about 90 minutes to go through a complete cycle. But the order, it doesn't just go, 1, 2, 3, REM. But the order within a cycle tends to go from N1 to N2 to N3, and then back to N2 before entering REM sleep, and then back to N1, and then it starts all over again. And how long each stage lasts depends partially on how old you are and partially on how long you've been asleep. You tend to do a lot more slow wave sleep or N3 sleep in the first few hours and then more REM sleep right before you wake up. So that's why if you really want to try to remember your dreams, you can set your alarm to go off a little earlier than usual, like 15 minutes. And so you'll get jerked out of REM sleep and are more likely to remember what you dreamed. You know that you get tired probably around the same time every afternoon or evening, and you might wonder how your body knows when to fall asleep or why a lot of people get tired in the afternoon. The answer lies in something called our circadian rhythms. And just like our sleep has cyclical stages, so does our wakefulness and our transition from wakefulness to sleeping. Circadian rhythms are our regular bodily rhythms across a 24-hour period, which is also called our internal biological clock. And these cycles control our body temperature, which rises during the day and then takes a brief dip in the early afternoon and then goes up again in the evening and then falls during the nighttime. So we control our body temperature and our sleep cycle, all sorts of things. Daylight is a big cue for circadian rhythms, and even artificial light can affect your circadian clock. So that's why when you travel somewhere with a big time difference, airplanes will usually adjust the lights in accordance with the time zone of your destination. They're trying to help you reset your biological clock. But resetting that clock can take time, which is when you experience jet lag. Your biological clock says it's time to go to sleep, but your new time zone says it's time to wake up. And so that transition can be a little taxing if you're traveling. But these circadian rhythms also change as you age, which is why a lot of younger people tend to be night owls, but as they age, older people tend to wake up and go to bed early. And your circadian rhythms can also prevent you from sleeping in when you want to sometimes. So maybe you get up every day at 6 a.m., Monday through Friday, and then Saturday you can finally sleep in, but you'll still wake up around 6 a.m. And that's because your internal biological clock has adjusted to you waking up at that time. So it regulates your metabolism, body temperature, sleep cycles so that you wake up at the same time.
Yeah, I didn't know a lot of that stuff. But in sleep paralysis, the body transitions to and or from REM sleep is out of sync with the brain. The person's consciousness is awake, but their body remains in a paralyzed sleep state. The areas of the brain that detect threats are in the heightened state and overly sensitive. Factors that have been linked to sleep paralysis include narcolepsy, a condition categorized by frequent, brief, and uncontrollable bouts of deep sleep, sometimes accompanied by hallucinations and an inability to move, irregular sleep patterns due to jet lag or swing shift work, for example, sleeping on your back, or a family history of sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis can be symptoms of medical problems such as clinical depression, migraines, obstructive sleep apnea, hypertension, and anxiety disorders. Signs and symptoms of sleep paralysis include the inability to move the body when falling asleep or awakening, lasting for a few seconds up to a few minutes, being consciously awake, unable to speak during an episode, having hallucinations and sensations that cause fear, feeling pressure on the chest, having difficulty breathing, feeling as if death is approaching, sweating, having headaches, muscular pains, or paranoia. I have 2 videos of people that have experienced the sleep paralysis. The first is about a man in a hospital for a sleep study as he undergoes an episode of sleep paralysis. The next one is a man talking about his sleep paralysis experience with the shadow people. Seeing shadow people is a very common occurrence during sleep paralysis. So I'm going to play those 2 videos back to back, okay? First one is going to be sleep study, my sleep paralysis on camera.
Hey guys, it's Dave, and in today's video I'm going to share with you some of the footage from my sleep study that I had recorded a number of months ago. This is me in the hospital back in late August having this sleep study, and it includes an episode of sleep paralysis which you're going to see a little bit later on. So we caught the sleep paralysis on camera, which I was delighted about. Now the video footage isn't great quality. It's basic low resolution 4:3 CCTV style, but you do get the general idea. Now, the reason I had this sleep study done was not just because of my sleep paralysis, but also because of the fact that I was occasionally, very rarely, waking up, not breathing. I would actually be choking. Now, it may be something to do with sinus problem, it may be something to do with allergies, or some other problem. The technician who I spoke to when he watched this video told me, and it's a full 8-hour video, he told me that basically I wasn't a very severe case because there's a lot of sensors on me. There's stuff on my hands, on my chest, in my nose. And so they're monitoring me not just through a video, but through other things as well. And he said that I wasn't particularly severe, but he did notice this particular episode, which I believe he called it something like an abnormal event or an unusual event that happened at 10 to 1 in the morning, and it was at 2 hours 32 minutes in, and you're going to see that very soon. So my theory is, I haven't spoken to the consultant about my case just yet, but my theory is that maybe basically the choking that I was getting, the sleep apnea, might be related to the sleep paralysis, whereby my throat is basically seizing up. Now, for those people who don't know anything about sleep paralysis, it basically occurs when everybody gets paralyzed more or less in their sleep, so they don't act out their dreams, but some people wake up and they're still paralyzed, and this usually happens when I'm lying on my back, and I lay on my back that night deliberately to try and bring it on and to demonstrate it. I don't usually try to sleep on my back. I usually sleep on my side. Very occasionally I'll get sleep paralysis there as well, but mostly it's when I'm on my back. And so you can move to a certain degree. You can kind of twitch, move your head a little bit, but you can't speak. You can open your eyes, you can look, you can blink your eyes, you can move your fingers slightly, move your toes, kind of wiggle your legs maybe a little bit, and your head moves back and forth, but you can't speak. And even though it's only for a few seconds, it's very disturbing because it feels like it's going on for minutes, and you kind of worry that it's never going to pass, and you try and fight it, and your limbs, everything feels really heavy. It's like there's somebody sitting on you. And some people hallucinate when this has happened. And so basically they are awake, but they're still dreaming. And some doctors have said that sleep paralysis while dreaming might actually explain things like alien abductions. Now, I have to say that I never dream and have sleep paralysis at the same time. I'm always very lucid. I just simply can't move. And we're coming up on the episode now. It's any second now. You're going to see it. And look at my leg. It's twitching. So I'm starting to wake up, but my eyes aren't open just yet. And so you're going to also start to hear my breathing become more and more labored as I start to panic, basically. And I'm trying to make noise. You can see me shaking just a little bit. My fingers going. Keep an eye on the fingers. And my head as well starts to twitch. I'm trying to speak or call out to the nurses, but it's just coming out as a kind of a snorting snore. There's my finger moving. And my eyes are open now. And you're going to start to see my head try and move. There you go. And this is what it looks like, kind of like a seizure. And you can see my eyes going. And I'm just getting more and more panicked. Eyes are wide open, blinking a little bit. And then finally, and then it's over. In one last burst of energy, it's gone. So that lasted quite a few seconds, basically about a minute almost. So although it's always disturbing to go through episodes like that, on the bright side, at least they had caught it on camera. So after about 20 minutes, I decided to call the nurse in. So I pressed the button, and when she came in, we basically had a conversation about it, and I explained to her what I went through. And then I made a plan with her that if I went through another episode of sleep paralysis that night, that I would keep the button to call the nurse in my hand, and if I was able to move my thumb, hopefully if I was able to move my thumb, I would press the button to call her back in. But unfortunately, it didn't happen, and I got back to sleep, and I got a reasonable night's sleep, but no sleep paralysis, no sleep apnea. So that's basically what came of the footage from the sleep study. I look forward to speaking with the consultant for more advice on these symptoms, and if you've experienced either sleep paralysis or indeed sleep apnea, which is of course more serious, please let me know in the comments below, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Okay. That's pretty much what sleep paralysis looks like. If you're looking at somebody watching them sleep, did you notice the problems, the difficulties he had trying to wake up? Okay, I'm going to play for you the next video. Sleep paralysis, shadow people, my story is the name of it. And I'll play it now, and then we'll move on from there.
Okay, so everything I'm about to say, if you feel like I'm crazy, feel free to feel like that's how you should feel. Sleep paralysis. You're asleep and you wake up. You can look around, but you can't move your body. It's pretty much started about 4 years ago. I started working overnights at my current job. I was so used to the day shift. And when night came, I would want to go to sleep, but I would force myself not to go to sleep. This is when it started happening. I'll just be laying there and I would just tell myself, do not go to sleep. Keep your eyes open. I would literally feel my body go to sleep, but I'd still be awake. I just can't move. You can't even move your head. You can't do nothing. All you can do is look around. That's it. I eventually got to the point where I would learn to just wiggle myself out of it. And mind you, it's dark. One specific time when it happened, I felt myself about to go to sleep and the light was on. Usually the light's always off. I fell into sleep paralysis. In my body, I couldn't move. So then I proceed to wiggle myself out of the sleep paralysis. So I'm wiggling, right? I looked down. I saw my arm moving out of my arm. My arm was moving pretty much accordingly to every movement that I was making. I was able to see the dresser through my hand. So I'm looking at my hand moving out of my hand. I know that sounds so weird for me to say that, but just bear with me. So I was pretty much aware that I could leave the body. But the reason I didn't get up was because half the time when the sleep paralysis would happen, I would always feel like something was in the room with me. So I would never do it. Fuck that shit. So as I'm doing that, I looked down at my chest and I really didn't notice it at first. I seen this light coming from my body. The only way I can describe the light, it was like the same color as a diamond and it was pulsing. There was a line pulsing out of it. Like about every 3 seconds, like boom, it would disappear. Boom, disappeared. It came out to like here, and it was just all around my body, and it was like shimmering and these lines pulsing through it, almost like a heartbeat. Mind you, at this point, I've never seen a shadow figure. Usually when I'd feel like something was in the room with me, eventually it'd get to the point where I would lay there just terrified. For whatever reason, I would just be terrified, and I would never look around. I ain't trying to see nothing crazy. So I'm asleep one night, right? I wake up. I felt like something was in the room with me. So I said to myself, I should just go ahead and wiggle myself back to movement before I feel this terrified feeling again. Even though I wouldn't see anything, I would just feel terrified. The terrified feeling would just hit me out of nowhere. It was almost like it wasn't me. So next thing I know, it hit me. My heart just beating fast, terrified. So I got curious. And I'm laying down, like face up. But I wasn't looking up. I looked down towards my chest. And so I see this black, like, I swear, I promise on everything, I'm just keeping it all the way 100. I seen this black, smoggy, misty stuff hovering over me. It had to be like 2 inches off of my body. It wasn't touching me, but it was laying on top of me. I seen like little stuff floating around in it. So mind you, I'm not looking completely in it. I'm just kind of looking at the edge of it. So at this point, I knew exactly what it was. It was one of these shadow figures. I couldn't hear it. Apparently they can talk to you, but for whatever reason, I can't hear them. I can see them and I can feel them, but I can feel them more than I can see them. So this thing is laying on top of me. So I'm like, okay. There was a couple things that I heard people say that they thought of. Usually what people do, they think about something else to take their mind off of it, and that feeling, that terrified feeling will go away. I thought of like a box or something crazy like a box, and it actually worked for like a couple seconds. And the fact that I'm like trying not to think about what was happening made me think about it more. The feeling went away for like a good 4 seconds, and then it hit me hard, just boom. Like the terrified feeling was even harder than before. And so I'm like, okay. So everybody's saying that to get this thing off of them is to call out to Jesus. I became curious, right? So I'm like, okay. So I said, Jesus. And nothing happened. So I'm just laying here and this thing is literally on top of me and I can't do nothing. I can't move. I can't do nothing. So next thing I know, I got mad. Even though I was in sleep paralysis, I don't know how I did this. I started lifting my arm up towards the shadow thing, right? Because there was nothing else I could do. I had to be lifting my arm up like literally that slow. It was almost to the point where I wanted to fight it. I'm getting mad and I'm raising my hand towards it like, get off of me, bro. Next thing I know, it gets off of me. I don't know where it went. I don't know if it just kind of got up and was kind of standing there waiting to see what I was going to do. So I kind of fell back. So I'm like, okay, let me wiggle back the movement before this thing gets back on top of me. I wake up, right? I started moving. The crazy thing about it was the fact that I really did not wake up. I just started moving. That thing was really in the room with me. So after that, I never seen a shadow person again up until a month ago. Pretty much January 1st, as New Year's Eve was happening. I went to sleep, but I kept the TV on. I'm on my side and I'm looking at the TV. So I fall asleep and I'm laying there. I wake up. So I look at the TV. I see something standing there. I just literally just standing there looking at me. I'm like, what you doing? So mind you, I'm in sleep paralysis, so I probably didn't say nothing. I just felt like I said something. Midway through saying that sentence, what are you doing? I realized that this is not who I think it is. This is one of these shadow things. I seen the whole body. The light from the TV was kind of shining on it. So I was able to see the full figure. It was real short. I didn't see the face. I really only looked at it for like a split second before I looked away. Its head was like kind of like, the top of the head was like slanted to the side. And it was kind of jagged. I knew it was short because I was able to see the top of the TV over his head. But I'm taller than the TV. But mind you, I'm laying down, so I still had to like look up at it. Once I realized what it was, once I realized that it wasn't who I thought it was, I got kind of startled. And the second this thing seen that I got startled, it walked at me. It just started walking towards me. As soon as I seen it start walking towards me, I like looked away. I tried to wiggle to get up. So I get up, and as soon as I started moving, it was gone. As soon as I started moving, I literally stayed in the same spot. I did not move because I'm not scared of them. And I felt the terrified feeling, but I'm literally not scared. I feel like it doesn't come from me. It's them doing it. It was standing right there in front of the TV looking dead at me as if it was waiting for me to wake up. Honestly how I feel about these things, they're annoying, really. But yeah, sleep paralysis.
that happens quite frequently with a lot of people. And if you suffer sleep paralysis and you start getting some of these symptoms and stuff, get it into your mind that you are having sleep paralysis. Kind of focus on something else, like the kid said. Focus on something else. Focus on your wife, your husband, your girlfriend, your kids, whatever. You have to focus on something else and try to move. Now, there's 5 terrifying, nightmarish facts about sleep paralysis, and I'm going to let you guys watch it. It's easier for you to watch the video than it is for me to explain it. So I'm going to start that video now.
It's one of the most terrifying phenomena known to man. Sleep paralysis, the frightening ordeal of waking up suddenly in the dead of night, temporarily unable to move a muscle or even speak. For some it happens nightly, and others experience horrifying visions and sensations during their sleep paralysis. Whether you've suffered from it personally or not, here are 5 things you need to know about this terrifying condition. Sit back and enjoy this very first Top 5 short. It's more common than you think. According to a study taken in America in 2011, in which 3,600 random people were asked whether they had experienced symptoms of sleep paralysis, a shocking 65% said they had, and research undertaken by the Sleep Paralysis Project found that certain social groups tend to be more at risk of falling victim to the frightening disorder. For example, their test results showed that a higher number of African Americans suffer from sleep paralysis, and the most common age range that is affected by the sleeping disorder is 16 to 43-year-olds. Although it's hard to gauge, as people younger and also older than this have reported being affected too. You cannot wake yourself up. Some people have mastered a practice called lucid dreaming, which means that they will retain a certain amount of control and consciousness while they are dreaming, allowing them, for instance, to wake themselves up from an intense nightmare. But unfortunately, this does not work for sleep paralysis. This is because it occurs when a person is halfway between being awake and in REM sleep, which means they are not technically dreaming, as their eyes are still open and their senses are still alert. People have reported trying desperately to wiggle their toes or scream to wake themselves fully, but it's never any use, and the sufferer simply must wait for the paralysis to pass, however long this takes. You may see things that you do not like. Though it's rarer than the sensation of being paralyzed itself, some people do report very frightening visions and sensations while in their paralysis state. For instance, many have reported feeling a weight on their chest during a sleep paralysis episode, as though an invisible being of some kind is pinning them to the bed. Others report hearing voices in the room, and in one case, a man reportedly heard heavy breathing and deep growling coming from just behind him, though of course he was unable to turn around and look. However, the scariest thing about sleep paralysis is that some people experiencing a sleep paralysis attack actually claim to see figures in the room with them. That could be dark shadows looming over them while they are completely unable to move, which brings us to the next fact. People see the same things. One of the most inexplicable and terrifying facts about sleep paralysis is that people from all around the world who have had no contact with each other have reported seeing the same thing during their episodes. The most commonly reported apparition is the old hag. Many authors and psychiatrists who have studied sleep paralysis have noted that many of their patients report the presence of a hideous old woman who seems to take pleasure in the fear and panic she is causing, laughing at her victims as they lie there. If this sounds like a joke, then keep in mind the hag is nothing new. Throughout the history of sleep paralysis, she has been described. In fact, in Scandinavian folklore, the belief is that sleep paralysis itself is brought on by the soul of a fallen woman, which has left its own body to terrify innocent people while they sleep in their beds. This entity, which Scandinavians refer to as mare, is in fact where the term nightmare originates from. This reoccurring apparition has led many to believe that sleep paralysis is supernatural in nature rather than medical, as it's very difficult to come up with an explanation as to why so many people report seeing the same entity. We do know how to treat it. As truly bizarre and frightening as the phenomena of sleep paralysis is, doctors have found that thankfully it is quite easy to treat. Studies have shown the main cause of sleep paralysis and all the scariness that comes with it is mainly not getting enough sleep. Without enough REM sleep, the brain finds it harder to switch off, sometimes resulting in the limbo state between being awake and dreaming, in which sleep paralysis takes place. Also, high levels of stress and anxiety are known to trigger the attacks, and even eating big meals or consuming alcohol right before bed can be triggers too. It's long been recommended that the best way to avoid sleep paralysis is to learn to truly relax and switch off all your worries before you go to sleep. Get between 6 to 8 hours of rest, and preferably not watch videos like this just before bedtime. So that's 5 facts about the terrifying experience that is sleep paralysis. I hope you've enjoyed this top 5 short, and I'll see you in the next one.
Well, I hope that was helpful to some of you people. I'm one of those people. I get up around 6 o'clock in the morning, sometimes earlier, and I go to bed probably around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't get much sleep at all, but I have never suffered sleep paralysis. But anyway, let's keep moving on here. The last video I want to show you is called Sleep Paralysis, and it's about a young girl on her computer reading a scary story from one of her friends around 1 a.m. in the morning when her mom bolts into the room and tells her to go to bed. This is just an example story of what sleep paralysis could be. Okay, it's a bit on the creepy side, and it's kind of on the funny side too, so I'll play that, and then we'll start getting into what's going to be next on Night Talk. So I'm going to start her right now.
That's dumb.
Don't ignore the shadows that lurk in the corner of your eye. They're watching you. The ancient Greeks called them shades. In Korea, the phenomenon is called gawi nulam, which means to be pressed down by a ghost. Some believe these shadowy creatures are interdimensional beings who are studying us for reasons unknown. I didn't believe in any of these myths, but the fact that others had experienced what I had made it more real to me.
Jeez, oh, Cat, it's 1 a.m. What are you doing up?
Reading. What are you doing up?
Don't get smart with me, Missy. 10 more minutes.
Fine.
I was 15 when I started seeing shadows in my peripheral vision. My parents got divorced, and my mom and I moved from DC to Roanoke, Virginia. I had a hard time sleeping in the new place. I was afraid of how quiet it was. I was afraid of the seemingly endless woods that surrounded my house. But mainly, I was afraid that when I laid in bed at night, I wasn't alone. I couldn't see it at first, but I could feel its presence, like a low-frequency hum vibrating just under my skin. And then, one night, I saw it. dark void in the shape of a human. I tried to get up, but I couldn't move. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. It crawled over me, brought its face to mine, and then...
Ah! Serves you right. Go to bed or I'm taking the computer.
Don't you ever knock?
Come on, sweetie. Go to bed. It's late. Okay, good night.
Night. Jeez.
Did you leave this on all night? I'm not made of money, you know. If you're not up in 30 minutes, I'm dragging you out of bed.
Now that you gotta admit is kind of creepy. Okay, we're gonna wrap this thing up. I'm gonna tell you about what's coming up. My next feed on May 9th at 8 p.m. Central Time will be about reincarnation. I'm gonna tell you about my reincarnation and my death at the Bullock Hotel in Deadwood, South Dakota in 1898. I will play 4 videos that explain reincarnation, why it occurs, and why most people don't remember their past lives. One video will be about proof of 7 children remembering their reincarnation. If you guys think that you may have been reincarnated, I would appreciate it if you would call here. The phone number is 402-370-8770 and tell us your story. People like hearing actual stories from people that have experienced paranormal phenomena. And this one, reincarnation, is pretty interesting when you start getting into it. I'm also going to start a second feed called Real Ghost Stories. This feed will be once in a while go live, because what it's going to be about is people calling in to my studio and telling their ghost story, what they've experienced, even stories that you've heard about. Ghost hunting groups and stuff, they can call in and they can talk about a scary incident that happened during one of their investigations. If you have any photos or videos or audio that you want to share for your ghost story, you're more than welcome. So anyway, I'm going to get out of here. I want to thank everybody for joining me tonight and thank all the new members. And I definitely hope you enjoyed this feed. So until May 9th at 8 p.m., I'll talk to you guys later.
You're going to come back and see us, aren't you? You better be. We need you. We got to have you. We depend on you. Come on back and see us. Come back for our next feed. I will be watching for you.